Hello and welcome to Learning from the Masters Oil Painting. My name's Jason Meyer and that's Cindy handling everything in the background, the foreground, and everything else. So tonight's show is going to be a little bit different. Last night, while editing the program, I decided to just go ahead. I needed a little more room and get rid of 8 terabytes, which was every video I've made for the last 6 years, including the ones I did for the episode tonight. I have the demo left, and we will go over that. But like I said, the whole show is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be live, but it's still good. And we're going to talk about focus tonight. We're going to talk about visual power and focus. So there's going to be 2 big parts tonight. First, we're going to look at some photos, and we'll literally have to slide through my photos, and I'll say a few words about it. So we're going to look at some paintings. We're going to take a peek at an actual landscape reference photo. We'll take a look at some student work and then some student exercises. After that, I do have the demo video, but it's just the video. So I'm going to run the video and then I will talk over it as it's playing. And so we might run a few minutes over, half an hour, maybe 45 minutes tonight. We'll see what we can do. And at the end, if anybody has any questions or whatever, let me know. If for some reason the lesson tonight is not clear, I'll try to repeat it again next week with all the video assistance and visual aids. But I think we can get through it. Let's see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here. And again, there's not going to be any music overlay or anything like that. No crops. I literally lost it all. So this is what we got. And you let me know. That's full screen on there. That works okay, right? When it comes to you.
Yep.
Okay, so what I wanted to do is I want to look at a couple of paintings here, and I want you to notice how they get you down towards the horizon. Okay, so if we look down here, this is gray, but it is darker than this gray, which is the sky. Right? Our sky is our light source, but our sky is darker and then goes to lighter. Do you see the concentration of darks right in here and how it's weaker dark as you move over there? So that keeps you off the edge of the canvas by making more visual power in here. When we look at this, do you notice the 2 black man-made structures compared to all the rest of that? And so naturally that's going to be a focal point. As limbs get thinner, generally they get lighter, but he's accentuated these a little bit darker here in the center. Okay, so I just wanted to show you how some of these happens and how with this same idea is let's keep the viewer in the center, you can have very different paintings. How have they done it? Right? Well, we've got the trees and the foliage up top framing all this light through the center, and the bottom we've got shade in here in the shade. Nothing's going to overcome in the light. We even got a kid sleeping here in this shade. What's going on? And chickens and see garden the vegetables, or what's going on? But let's investigate just a little bit further the light that we see. So this is in light, but you see that's not very much. So donkey, and then there we go in between the donkey. And now we jump to this big shape. But look, it continues up into here. So this shape doesn't necessarily go straight across, does it? We're jumping up, and then we run into the donkey that gives us all these negative shapes over the tree, and then the donkey's luggage. Boom. Donkey's luggage, right? Is that a city boy talking or what? The donkey's pack. Boom, and it spills over to the lightest ground. So do you see we've got the lightest, lightest, and lightest right there in the center. So even in this entire center, there's focus in the middle. And that just helps it feel more natural rather than butting up on something on the edge. So this is a photo taken not a 2-minute walk from my house. And I hope you see how we could use our boxes to construct this, right? Where's that horizon line going to go? How tall are those mountains? What's the relationship of the size of those trees? By the way, could we do a light through the middle of this? Yes, we could, because do you see those light buildings? So again, these simple ideas is, okay, I'm going to put light through the middle, has a million variations. But it's important that we know where our light's going to go and that we create that pattern so the eye goes there before we get to any detail. I'm wanting to end this course, or we're going to end this course, talking about composition for the last few weeks. So we're going to be coming back to this photo. And I wanted to look at a student work too that we'll be coming back to. Let me see if I can switch over to my, well, we'll talk about this again and what's happening and how to look at this. I really want to show them that. Let's see if I can do that. Here we go. So here we can see kind of some of the big divisions. And can you see they're very similar in size? And also, can you see that those big shapes are extremely active? Okay, so one of the first things that I would do would be I would come and resize those. And then to me, I see 3 points of interest. We have the foliage, we have the cabin, and then we have the mountaintop, the ridge there of interest. And can you see they're all about the same size? The triangle is not bad, but I would also rearrange those a little bit and reassign a couple of values a little bit. So as we get into composition, I'll work on this one in particular, and show you how we can take these same elements and make it into a more powerful painting. Let's see. Now we'll go back. Oops. We'll get there together. I wouldn't normally be taking you through all my photos, but that's where we are. Okay, so we're looking at some student exercises now. And I love seeing this. Can you guys see after a couple of weeks of just a few things, you could really have some landscape going here? I don't want to really get into too far critiques or whatever, but towards the end, I will go over a few things. Right? I guess it worked me kind of throwing a fit last week because I had a lot more work turned in this week. Thank you guys for doing that. Appreciate that. Okay, and do you see how by sizing and a little different values, a little different colors, these can all appear as very different paintings. And by the way, we're just setting things up now. What if along this front here, we focused your eye right here, right? Like we chose, let's have them look right here. Let's skip over this. Let's have them look in here and then have them look up there. And that's actually going to be the exact demo today. So we're going to talk after we look at some student work about how we get focus using visual power. This is basically a painting ready to sell. A little interest, a little focus, a little movement through there. Bang, put a price tag on that. Put a price tag on it. So this is my demo, rough, up to the point before I do what you'll see tonight on there. And one of the things I want to mention, I was working with some people earlier today and really showing how I'm not doing anything extraordinary, but it's the measure at which we do it at. Okay, and one of those things that can make a big deal is, do you see how active my brush work is up here? And do you see how big the strokes and everything are? As you go back, in addition to do everything else you do, if your strokes could get smaller and not so active, smaller and not so active, and then like whisper quiet and not active at all, and then you build that up layer upon layer upon layer, it amazes me still to this point what that consistency will do. In all those little ways, in the color, in the texture, in the edge, less, 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 less. So now we're going to turn to the visual power triangle. And our visual power triangle looks like this. We started this portion of the course looking at one thing and seeing how linear and atmospheric perspective could make it visually weaker. So this is the visually stronger on this corner, strongest. And as we go back, and how do we go back into space? We add middle. It gets visually weaker, visually weaker, visually weaker, visually weaker. Then we did two things, and we learned if we can take two things or multiple things and send them to the same middle, that would be very harmonious, right? And in our case, one of the things was tree, another thing was ground, and our middle was the sky at horizon. Or we could do tree in the near sky, right? So these are things that are near each other, and we want to be able to control their visual power without necessarily using the middle or making them look like they're going back into space. So how do we do that? Well, again, to go back into space to make things visually weaker, we add middle and more middle to make it go further and further back to the pile of paint that we're working on. Because ultimately, this thing one isn't a thing at all, is it? It is simply a pile of paint. Thing two isn't a thing either. It is a pile of paint. So what we're concerned about then is this distance between thing one and thing two. And if we shrink that distance, the visual power lessens. And if we expand that distance, the visual power increases. So how do we do that? As I said before, these indicate piles of paint. So we got pile of paint. We've got the tree or the ground, whatever, pick a side. So let's think about how these fit into our color wheel. Well, the ground is a little more yellow, and the trees are a little gray or a little more neutral. And if we want more visual power, we want to send those two piles further away from each other. So for the ground, if we added cad yellow, that would pull that further away from here. But if we added cad yellow to the tree, what is it going to do? It would bring these closer. So you have to understand what's lighter, what's darker, and whether you want to go closer together or further apart. For the tree, if I wanted to take that further and have it have more visual power, I could add burnt umber. And that's going to pull it away from that green. But color's not a wheel. It's more of a cylinder, with the lightest value on the top and the darkest value on the bottom. So we could think about this like white in the center at the top because it's neutral, black at the center and the bottom. And then around the outside would be yellow, orange, red, violet or purple. I always switch back and forth the one I use. Blue, green, one I use for words. So, but the color wheels here, and then that would go, violet would go all the way down this side. Red goes all the way down that side. Orange all the way down that side. With each color being darker and darker and darker as it goes down. So if we have two colors, part of our crew, one is here and one is here, well, this is obviously lighter and this is obviously darker. So if I wanted to make this more visually powerful next to that, if I lighten it up, it's actually going to weaken the visual power. But if I darken it and bring it more towards the edge, it will increase the visual power. So if I bring these together, they're visually weaker. How do we bring them together? Easy, 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 easy. A little bit of this in there, a little bit of this in there. You can literally use one or the other to influence the other one, or both. But when you want to make it visually stronger, it gets a little trickier, right? You have to be able in your head to know where you're at in color space. And you have to know what you're relating it to. Or else there's no way to make it visually stronger. Now, as we start this, as much as you can, try to go straight out away from these things. After you've done it for a little while, you'll get a feel, and there's a little play in here, right? Like this doesn't have to be an absolute straight line, but there's a little avenue, let's say, that you could travel. And the same around here. You can take this that direction, but just a little bit. You can take it this direction a lot without it messing up your harmony. Okay? So again, the closer the piles are, the visually weaker. The further they are away, the visually stronger they are. So it's kind of hard to read and it's not exact, but if this was our ground and that was our tree, right? The ground's lighter and the trees are darker. So for more visual power, we'll make the ground even lighter or the trees even darker. Again, going in the right direction of the color as well. Okay, so all of this was basically to describe and show to you guys that color is three-dimensional space and you got to know where you are in it. Because if I wanted to do something with these trees and I just added a bunch of color, all it's doing is confusing the relationship between these two. If we'll be more clear on what's happening between these two things, these two colors, that will give us a better painting than adding a bunch of bright colors or 7 other colors or boom, boom, boom. This is how a painter thinks about color. Not, I have a favorite color and I love it, I'm going to put a bunch on there. Right? And we saw that early on with the crew. Oops, that's for another time. So that's our slideshow there. Let's get back to here. So hopefully you guys were able to follow that along without the zooms and the pans and the crops and the music and see what that's about. Now, for the demo, we're going to go to the palette and mix this up. And as I said, I will be voicing over live. So let's do that. If you do have any questions, write them into Cindy. And since this is live, Okay, well, you guys missed a lot. That was great. But since I was muted, all right, let's do that. So the red circles are the areas of focus, right? And so if we want to focus the ground and these tree holes right there, the X's are areas we do not want to focus. Okay? And so what I'm doing is I'm taking the areas where I do not want to focus and I'm scratching them up. So the areas outside of those circles, I'm making them weaker. Okay? So some of this is I just want to show you different ways you can handle paint, right? Generally, after I've worked on something 2 or 3 times, when I go back to work on it again, the first thing I do is get a sharp stick and start scraping things. Okay, but again, don't just scrape to scrape. Scrape to take areas away or to weaken the visual power. All right, so we'll spin. And then this next part I'm showing here is oiling out. I take some of my medium. There's different things you can take. You don't want to build this stuff up too thick. It'll get tacky and never dry. But you do want to even the surface out, and it allows the paint to go down, and then you can move it around a little easier. Okay, notice how some of my scratching, now you don't see those lines so obvious, but it still broke up some of those lines and everything. Okay, one of the hard things to do with oil paint is that it's a layering process. And so at the layer 1, you're not going directly towards finish, but you're laying the layer down that needs to go in front of the second layer and the third layer. And what working with visual power does is it allows it always to be alive. You're always looking and judging. So we've mixed up, wow, I just realized I've missed a lot, but we got sky, ground, trees, middle, light, and dark. We're going to start on our trees. I've got the trees lined up there. And what I'm doing is I'm going around the area of focus, and I'm going to keep some of those edges harder. And then outside the areas of focus, I'm going to take them away. How do you take things away? In painting, you make it all the same. If it's all the same without thick brush strokes and everything, there's nothing to catch the eye. There's nothing to look at. It goes away. So like right here, you see how I took all that activity on the edge away? And then up at the top, you'll see there's some activity. Right? And then by jumping outside too, then how can I soften this up at the top here? Well, yeah, I can take away the changes, the light, dark, the brush stroke. But then I can also add light tree, because remember we've only been working with the dark. And if I lighten up that corner, it takes the pressure off of there. And I don't want to be at the top of the tree. I want to be towards the bottom of this tree. So I want to relieve the visual power, or sometimes I call it the pressure, from the top of the tree. Does that make sense? Now we're going to the shadow on the ground underneath. And part of what I'm doing now is, right, nobody's been out there mowing all that lawn down to 1/4 of an inch. But it's uneven, it's ragged, it sticks up. So we can do some of that. And yeah, I regularly use my paper towel to adjust things. So you see how by adjusting that shadow shape, it becoming more active and everything, it becomes more. Now this is ground. This is just regular ground I've mixed up this time. And yes, it's a little bit different than before. But again, it's going to be consistent. And again, see how I'm breaking up the front of that shadow? Because that light grass will be sticking up in front of that. And then the dark grass would be sticking up in front of the next light. Okay, and so here I'm just with less pressure, just spreading some of that around. And can you see on that far side, on that right side, it's visually weaker than there. And now I want to make this stronger. How do I make it stronger? It's the ground in light by adding a little cad yellow. So we're going to add a little cad yellow to get it further away from the trees. And then that also makes it stronger than the rest of the ground. And voila, we have a focal point. Okay, now granted, again, this is a demo, so it's not the most refined you've ever seen, but hopefully you can see how this works very clearly. Doing this is easy. The hard part is the measure, right? Getting enough space, but not too much space. And then how do those things come back together? All right, let's speed this along and see what else we have here. Okay, so now I want to go back into space. What do? I take some middle and I put it in with my light. I'm not putting it in with a light that has all the yellow in it, is it? I'm putting it into my original pile. And it can look almost like I'm pecking at the panel. But what I'm trying to do is get different brush strokes and put the paint down in different ways so it's interesting, right? And by doing that in layers and a little different each time, it builds interest. If I want to go further back, how do I do that? Add more middle. Okay. Okay. Yeah, and that's so I was just reading through your comments, Claudia, and some of those were written, I think, while I was muted or around that time. But I'm trying to repeat it so because it is hard to wrap your brains around in some sense. You know, technically it's just very easy. It's what we do, but we have all these other thoughts in our head. And so it takes us a little while to wrap it around. But my goal with this course is to give it to you in a manner that, one, you can eventually understand what's happening, and two, you have the power to use it. Yeah, and the visual power eventually is about using your intuition. But you're learning to see the painting in terms of visual power. And then that allows you to judge if you need more or less. Okay? All right, we got our volume back on. Peggy's here. All right, there we are. Good, good, good. There you got it. All right, Claudia, good. Just stay with us. Stay with us. So how did I get my focus on the inside of that tree? Well, with those sky holes. And how I could bring even more focus there would be to show limbs or tree trunks inside those sky holes. Okay, so you see that all the details we add are very particular in very particular situations because of what we want or don't want happening there. And the other thing on some of the student work I saw is you want to make sure at whatever level you are that the sky holes are that color. Like, don't put the sky holes that are on the ground, showing the ground through there, and then put sky in those holes. Ground's got to be in those holes. And again, it's a little discipline, and at first it seems like it's messing up my flow, it's messing up my intuition, it's messing up, I want to feel this. Yes, it does. But understand it intellectually, get a handle for it, and then you can work it into your flow where it's not interrupting. Okay, but unfortunately, I don't know any other way to learn this is to kind of come out of your flow and see if you can't wrap your head around it so that you can use it and make sense of it. Not so you can answer a question on a test, but so that you can make your painting more powerful here and less powerful there. And with that skill, your paintings will have a marked improvement. Painting is really, in the end, about judgment. Judging the sizes, judging how much change, how fast the change is, and all of that. So what am I doing here? Let's see, we got about 5 minutes left here. Okay, so I'm working on the upper sky now. And again, I've got that last focal point at the top side of those trees there that I work on. So some dots to see where I am, and then notice that I start where I want to focus, in that general area, because the paint is strongest right now. And again, I know it's not the best. Maybe you guys think it's the best, but I'm kind of frustrated working at this pace because in order to do it right, I need to go a lot slower. But I don't have 72 weeks to edit all my videos, so I got to go fast. So I can get video edited every week. The video I don't erase, that is. So. Great, Peggy. And I have put these in order, and yes, go back through and see what you have there. I've tried to make it into a sequence. And hopefully if you've come this far and then go back to the second or third video, what seemed kind of like a mystery now will be, oh, that's very clear. Okay? Okay, so let's see. Do I do anything else here? Oh, yeah. Some more little subtlety here. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to take some light on the tree, and I've put some air or some middle in it because this is the second batch of trees, not the first batch. And then on that top left corner of this bank, the light tree pile is lighter than the dark tree pile, which means it'll have a less impact with that stuff around it. So that's another way that I'm weakening the visual impact there. And then outside where I want you to focus, you see how I just scuff those edges up a little bit? So as a painter, you have to know how to be specific and how to be vague. And eventually we're going to have to be very specific with our vagueness. And we can do that, and it's a skill, and it's a brush mark, and it's a direction of the paint, quality, color, value, chroma. Because in the end, none of these things are set places, but they're more like directions we head. So now I'm going to take my tree dark and reinforce some of these negative shapes there where I want you to focus. Okay, do you see how an area of focus is starting to develop there? An area of focus on this first tree and then on those tops. And then with my next layer, I could continue that area of focus. This is how you finish a painting. There's not more detail necessarily drawn in, but you've orchestrated the visual power. Now, it can be very detailed, or it can be very loose. But you need areas of varying or different visual powers, and that should be orchestrated through your canvas. Okay? All right, 1:20. Did I do anything else here? What am I getting into? Hopefully I'm not about to mess this up. We'll see. By the way, you can see that camera is where my head should be when I'm painting. So I'm working off from the side and with the glare so you guys get the best shot. And that's another reason these things don't always look the best. So see if you can't make yours better than mine. Right? What's the saying go? The master should only accept defeat from two people. His children or his students. I want you guys, go ahead and kick my butt. I'd love it. Oh, I think Tom's up for that challenge. I think Tom accepted that challenge. All right. Going back and rewatch. Yeah, this stuff is deep. It sounds very simple, but it's very deep, and if you'll get this, you'll have a lot more control over your paintings. Okay, guys. That's it for that. All right. Look at that, 737, not too bad. So honestly, I want you guys to look at me. Do I look 8 terabytes lighter? You gotta say yes, because that's the only good thing about it. All right, so we're gonna move forward. I would like to hear from you guys, even if it's later, if you processed this lesson, or if we should kind of repeat this one again with more graphics and stuff next time. Because I'll either repeat this one, and so that we all get a good gel on it, or I'm going to move on to composition. And what we'll do with composition, well, we'll see. I don't want to promise anything. All right. Well, there you go. There's me, quote unquote, winging it because all the video was lost. So sorry about the loss in production quality, but hopefully you got good stuff. And it was actually nice seeing you guys get to write back and forth a little bit. All right, so I'm going to give you guys just a second to catch up if there is any questions. And then we're going to call it a night. Please remember, hit that thumbs up button. It really likes us. The other day I thought we had 100-something views and 0 likes. Oh, I got so sad. I thought, do I not have any friends? So be my friend. Give us a thumbs up. If you want to be a really good friend, subscribe to us. If you want to be a patron and support this, you're always welcome to donate, as all this is free. And for all those who've donated so far, thank you, thank you, thank you. We've got new good things coming up. This program will end at the end of May. In June, if you're local to the Central Coast of California, San Luis Obispo area, I'm going to teach an in-person class, Introduction to Oil Painting. It's for really brand new people. So if you have any friends or family that'd be interested, it's going to be a 5-week series in June. And we'll have that series added to the school when we're done as well. All right, guys. Don't be so hard on yourself. I present this like it's obvious, and in one sense it is obvious once you get it. But until you get it, it can be anything but obvious. Okay? So I'm here to support you guys and help you along as much as you can. Write in with your questions. I try to address them each week. And please keep sending me your exercises. We'll really appreciate it. It's a way to hold you guys accountable. And then when you do it every week, you'll see the progress. I think you've already seen it. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We love you. Say goodbye to Sin.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Hopefully we'll be back to a regular format next week. And until then, paint, 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 paint. Smile, smile, smile. It is spring. It's spring. Bye, everybody.